you will find once you get involved in this industry that it's very intense. There is a tremendous amount of things that can go wrong. It is a 100% one of these industries that requires long-term relationship building. And the only way to really do it properly, in my opinion, and I would say, 95% of our industry is full-time, 7 days a week, and you have to be able to stick with it through those first 3 to 5 years minimum.
Welcome, everybody, back to another exciting show of the About That Wallet podcast. I am your host, Anthony, where we help you build strong financial habits. And I actually wanted to bring on a special guest by the name of Thomas Gordon. And the cool thing about Thomas is that he doesn't own a business. And that's really cool because, like I said, this show is for you. I want any and everybody with any type of finances. We all go through our day-to-day and we actually talk about our habits. Now, Thomas, though, he is actually heavy on real estate and crypto. And those are one of the two main hot topics this year, especially because of the recession. How you doing today, Thomas?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, because of this recession that we're going through, how is business in real estate?
So yeah, I mean, interest rates over the last 10 years have been such a driving force in what's been a ferocious market. I mean, I got started in 2011 after finishing school in Los Angeles. I came back to DC. I'm a native Washingtonian, and it was fortunate because I got started at a time when there was, DC was one of these markets that had recovered much quicker than, or was recovering much quicker than the rest of the country, because you have the combination of like pretty strong private sector, but also just kind of guaranteed money in the public sector vis-a-vis the government and politics and attorneys and State Department folks, So, it was easy to get started under those conditions, but, now the music is definitely starting to stop a little bit as we get into, trying to stave off inflation and raising the interest on money. It's not across the board, right? Like, not every product is suffering. There's still some neighborhoods that are still extremely, strong for sellers, and there's still a lot of buyer demand for. But you're definitely seeing things slow as like people who would otherwise be entering the marketplace as first-time home buyers, or maybe upgrading from first home to second home. Prices haven't come down enough to the point where these interest rates are making it affordable for them to buy anymore. So it's definitely a concern for a lot of people in the real estate sector, no doubt.
Yeah, since you've been doing it for like 11 years, what are I would guess you would say, what is the best program for a first-time homeowner to get in, to be part of, to get their first property?
I mean, I would say, new construction is a great option. Frankly, I mean, you have some incentives by the district, and first-time home buyers in Maryland, but they're not, I wouldn't call them like jaw-dropping, points of entry. Whereas, new construction is a nice option for your first house because most of these communities are offering, almost all of your closing costs paid. Right. If you use their in-house lender, you're going to get, potentially like 2 to 2.5% off of your, in some cases, $10,000, $15,000, $25,000 off of your closing costs, which is an enormous help because that's money that you would otherwise have to come out of pocket with and not be able to finance. Now, obviously, when interest rates are higher, you do want to, sort of focus on the lending side and get the best rate there. And that's another reason for new construction is like, you can go with the lowest rate possible, regardless of sort of, having to use a really highly accountable local lender with really good performance rates, because the house is going to take a year and a half to 2 years to build. So it's really like, You can kind of breathe easy that way. It's also obviously nice not to have to compete against other buyers potentially, and then pump up the price in a multiple offer situation.
Nice. So I always hear these terms about points. Can you explain the points of what they are?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely would defer a lot of the lending side to an actual loan officer in terms of the finer points. But points are essentially, well, I'll give you an example. Like mortgage interest, right, is just a fancy word for a point penalty that you have to pay each month to the lender for coming up with less than 20% down. And so that's one that people always try to avoid if they can. But yeah, points are basically just they can be fees or something that's tacked on to the principal of the loan that the lenders throw that term around a lot because loan officers really are not just dealing with you on the front side of loaning you the money, but you'll find out very quickly that right immediately after you close on the property, that lender is probably going to be selling your mortgage to another interested party, and that'll happen multiple times through the life of the loan. They're selling each other debt, and the interest on that debt are the points involved. But I would definitely save the lending side for a loan officer because I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. Like, it's pretty compartmentalized, our industry. Like, we're taught to basically focus strictly on contract negotiation. What does the contract say? Explaining all those finer points to people so that we navigate that contract in a way that either protects the buyer or maximizes the interests of the seller. And I tend to just let the lender lend.
Nice. Stay your lane, pretty much. Put the
Yeah.
on, just keep it focused.
Right.
A lot of people that are and looking into actually getting their second property, or just kind of figuring out if they should be a passive investor, and like they hear all these cool cliche terms about real estate and actually getting into it. What are as you could say, the biggest hurdle that you've witnessed with somebody that's actually getting their first home?
So, buying your first home, like I said, over the last 10 plus years has been very friendly to buyers. I mean, it's actually kind of nice to be a buyer right now, despite the interest rates, because you can kind of sit back and sort of pick apart deals, right? Like that was not the case over the past decade. You basically had to either get in and be prepared for a dogfight for just about every property. And, hopefully you have an agent who can still help you win under what were extremely aggressive, circumstances in terms of what you had to come out to pay and be willing to sacrifice in terms of contingencies in the contract to win a house. But now, because, demand has fallen due to interest rates, if you're still able to save money and obviously beat inflation, which is a much larger conversation, the things are going to, I foresee, like, improve for buyers, and you can afford to be patient now and wait for. I mean, you can never. There's no such thing as timing the bottom, right? It's very difficult to catch a falling knife. So a better question that buyers buying their first home should ask is like, is this, whether it's a house or any other investment, is it cheap or is it expensive? If it's cheap, you should be considering buying, whether that's the bottom or not. And I mean this if you zoom out historically, right? And if it's expensive, you sell. And so, I mean, it was during the pandemic that I was telling people, I wrote a note to all my clients who had owned a home for over 5 years. I'm like, I have never seen a more favorable market to sellers in my, neither me nor my business partner, who's been doing this over 20 years, had ever seen circumstances so favorable to sellers. And, I was urging them, like, hey, just so you know, I don't think this could possibly last. I see a bigger longer term picture where money's going to start to have to get more expensive.
Mhm.
And, some people listened and some people didn't. But now, if you haven't sold by now, you kind of miss the boat a little bit, depending on what you own. But I think it's a great time for buyers, especially a first time home buyer, to just sit back, kick their feet up, watch and see what happens with the Fed and the market, and hopefully be in a position if prices do start to get suppressed to be able to get something at a very affordable circumstance.
Nice. Because you mentioned politics a little bit.
Mhm.
How important are politics in your realm for your business?
I mean, as an agent, we're just taught to steer clear of political discussions because, even though DC is a very liberal city, you don't know. Like
Right.
you never want. There's a lot of time spent educating. We have to do continuing education every 2 years to keep up with like changes in legislative policy and to our contracts and things to know. But a lot of the education is spent on like educating on how to deal with people as your customers and clients, and you don't want to assume anything about anyone. That's like a big no. So you may think you have someone figured out and you have a good rapport with them, but their politics may be completely different from yours. And so you just it's kind of like dating, like until you really know someone, you kind of just want to steer clear of politics and religion and all that kind of stuff, because it really doesn't serve you. And I think that money in general, whether it's real estate or otherwise, people may think it's like there's a lot to be considered in terms of how politics influence the state of things. And my opinion is that money doesn't really care about politics one way or the other, and neither should you. If your goal is to be successful in an investor, whether it's real estate or otherwise, there is a priesthood around money, whether it's like IRS tax code or just like investing. And nowhere in there, in that handbook or sort of navigational realm of how to make money and be profitable, does it ask whether you're a Democrat or Republican or an independent. I mean, that
Sure.
none of the language is really set up that way, and it's the same in real estate. Politics don't really enter into things.
That's good. Now, talk about your upbringing, because not everybody has the mentality to deal with real estate for that long. Like you hear some people, usually you hear like just middle-aged women getting into real estate. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
But you found that out like, in your youth, so shall I say, and stick with it. So what was your mindset around that time frame?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's like, I mean, I think, there's not a huge barrier to entry for our industry, which is good because it allows a lot of people from many different backgrounds to be able to get their license and start, helping people. But it also doesn't really lend to us a tremendous amount of like consumer confidence. Real estate agents aren't really trusted in many opinion poll surveys, like say your doctor or your lawyer, right? So you have to be prepared to really prove yourself to the general public. And so the way you do that is really like, we as agents, we tend to struggle with many people being licensed. And so we'll have a number of transactions throughout a year where we're dealing with someone who's maybe newly licensed, which is fine. It's okay to be newly licensed. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has to be at some point. But a lot of folks are just kind of doing it part-time. They've got another 9-to-5 job. And so they're just kind of weekend warriors out there to get a little extra scratch, and I think that's a major disservice, not just to our industry, but to the actual clients themselves, because you will find once you get involved in this industry that it's very intense.
Mhm.
There is a tremendous amount of things that can go wrong. It is 100% one of these industries that requires long-term relationship building. And the only way to really do it properly, in my opinion, and I would say, 95% of our industry is full-time, 7 days a week. And you have to be able to stick with it through those first 3 to 5 years minimum, hustling as hard as you can to get in front of as many people as you can, to learn as much as you can. And that's the hardest point, because it takes time to build a book of business to where you're consistently getting referrals, and someone's going to own their house for 5 years. That's how long it's going to take for your buyers to become sellers minimum.
Oh, okay.
Right. So you got to be thinking, if I can make it to years 6, 7, and 8, that's when you start making, serious money, because as long as you're staying in touch with your people that you helped and you're doing a good job, they're going to be calling you back, and you're going to be start balancing out more like list side transactions to buy side. So you have to be willing to stick with it. I mean, I to make ends meet, when I first couple of years, remember, this is also still the worst recession for decades, basically, that I was just kind of getting started in. And, it's a grind in the beginning, even when there was at that time a ton of internet leads coming through, because there was all this, both national and international kind of interest in the DC market. I think people with money were looking like, hey, where can I pick up some property, under these circumstances where it's like things are cheap and there's not a lot of competition. And DC happened to be one of those places, but that gradually started to thin out. And so, I would say if you're going to get started in real estate, we're coming up on another opportunity where, if there is a bigger crash, right? Like, get your ducks in a row now, because that's going to thin out a lot of your competition in terms of agents. 95% of our business is done by 5% of the people.
Wow.
And that's a very telling statistic. So if you can manage to be full time and take this seriously and don't give up on it, and you become one of those 5% of people, you will be making, exponentially more than the person who just kind of dips their toes in and out of the water.
Yeah, because you hear people that want to do this but don't have the leverage to make it full time. And
Right.
I understand everybody had to start somewhere, so they might have to be that weekend warrior, but for how long? Like, and
Yeah.
to get in front of so many people, do you actually have like a TikTok out there to tell people like, hey, I'm a real estate agent here in DC. Let me know if you want a house. Like,
well, many of the really younger agents that I like, and I'm not saying I'm old or anything like that, but like some of the more, I'm a millennial, but I'm creeping up on 40 here. And I'll tell you, like, I helped my team develop, my previous team, I helped develop their website. And I was very tech savvy and like more social media forward. I was good enough at this that I built enough client base that I didn't have to necessarily put myself out there to that degree anymore. And I've always found social media to be kind of a toxic place in some degrees, not from a business side, but like, yeah, I would say like, so I don't, so I'm kind of weird that way. I don't recommend this to people, basically. Like, I got off social media, but it was because I had enough, of a book of business where that wasn't maybe necessarily a necessary grind for me anymore. Right. But if you're just getting started, or even like, you could be doing it as long as me. And like, if you're really hungry, you should absolutely continue to do that, because it's a great way to leverage and stay in front of people, widen your audience, of who knows you're out there. And I see, people doing the TikTok thing and the Instagram shorts and all this stuff when they go into properties, and they've really taken the time to understand like audience engagement, do's and do nots. And it's very impressive to me. I'm just not that guy anymore,
Yeah.
I have like I will grind my cell phone into dust. I'm not big into like new snazzy technology or that type of stuff. So probably not a good question for me, but I would absolutely encourage people to pay attention to that, because when you're just starting out or trying to expand just beyond, especially if you like, let's say you go to a new city.
Yeah.
I'm a native Washingtonian, so a lot of my first people were friends and family who lived here and have been there their whole life, right? And that's the crazy part about real estate is like I could be doing this 40 years, right? Move to Hawaii, and it would be basically as though I had done nothing,
Yep.
because I mean, I would know, real estate in general, as far as like how to navigate a contract and stuff once I learn, and get licensed there. But in terms of pay, it's not like you've been at a company for 40 years and then you move to another city where they're giving you a raise and like more responsibility. You're basically starting over again, because you need to convince people to work with you, and people work with who they know, like, and trust, which tend to be like friends and family, right?
Right.
So you have to bear that in mind. It's like if you really want to have a long sustained career, you kind of gotta make that decision early on, and you got to say to yourself, like, will I be happy being in Washington, D.C., or being in Connecticut, or being in, Michigan for the next 20 years? And knowing that, I started to pay very close attention and be very careful about what I did with the money I net profited, so that I could invest as quickly as possible and free myself up as soon as I possibly could to be able to move or have other options.
See, now you're hitting on a topic that I like to talk about, which is the psychology of things. Now, you actually have graduated with a major in psychology from UCLA. Um,
Sociology.
social.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh! All right, let me edit
That's
that.
okay.
That's where the bleep is coming. But within for sociology, so you actually understanding like how people are interacting with each other and having that mindset. Did that help you out in your current business now?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, that's the thing, is like, what do people study when they go to school, and I've always been a very um outgoing, kind of precocious personality. I like talking with people. I like being around people. And so sociology is basically the study of people and culture. So it kind of just enhanced those innate interests anyway. And in real estate, if you don't like people, do not be a real estate agent, because it's you have to be willing to put yourself out there all the time. You have to be willing, you want to be around people as often as possible. In fact, like a lot of like what my business partner and I have designed for ourselves, and what a lot of very successful teams do, is to have people who assist you in all the other aspects behind the computer, like a marketing, like someone to handle like the marketing of your property, someone to handle social media engagement, someone to handle contracts to close, all stuff I know how to do, but I shouldn't be doing, because the business is actually really, you want to be in front of people all the time.
Yeah.
You want to be going, to any way you can engage with people you both know and don't know. That's actually, you're building your business. Even if you're just having fun and talking to people, just kind of planting the seed that, like, I'm a real estate agent. That's what you should be doing all the time.
Well, I'll just wear a shirt. I'm a real estate agent. Like,
Right. Seriously. And even with people who you would think remember that you are an agent, people that you've worked with in the past, it is a cardinal rule. You have to keep track of them wherever they may go, and you want to be, popping by as often as possible, sending them stuff in the mail, to constantly be reminding them, because you'd be surprised, people will forget, and then they decide they want to sell, and then they can't even dig up the contact info for who helped them in the first place. Not everybody, it's not automatic for everybody.
right.
And you'll go to like make contact with them and see their address has changed, and you'll be kicking yourself.
So in other words, be that McDonald's, cause that McDonald's app, man, it'd be on me all the time. Like, hey, we got those fries you like for $2.
Yeah, I mean, you need to. I mean, for instance, so we used to have a system with our old team. We were all about engagement, where we would do pop buys, and we would have a list of addresses, and every week we'd have some small token of appreciation, like a little gift or a magnet calendar or some, something to drop by. And whether or not they were home or not, a lot of times in the day they wouldn't be, and you just leave it by the door and just say, hey, just stopping by and, drop this off for you. Little things like that, they go a long way. And then next thing you got a client who's posting, oh, look what my real estate agent gave me, and they put that on Facebook, and now all the people they know, like, oh, they got a good agent. Hey, by the way, can you give me his contact info, because we're thinking about doing this or that, right?
That's great marketing right there. I like that.
Yeah.
Because I saw somebody on Instagram who is actually giving their buyers Louis Vuitton bags just for shopping with them. And I was like,
that is so funny you say that, because my buyer who I settled with today sent me that yesterday as kind of a hint, wink, wink, like he's out here giving his clients Louis Vuitton. And I said, well, I'm having a electronic lock installed in your place for you that I'm taking care of. I'll cancel that and just fly to France and go get you your bag. I mean, it's just that type of stuff, when you can do something like that goes viral, because obviously the second person is to mention that, that's huge for that guy. He's going to get a ton of calls off of that. So that's sometimes going over the top. It's more than just the price of the gift. It pays for itself, way many more times over.
Yeah, that's why they say the power of your phone is more expensive than you actually pay for the actual phone, because it provides so much access. It provides you open up to the world, and then allow people to come to you in that realm. So trying to get to this the second segment of the show, which is talking about like some of the habits around like what got you to where you are today. And one of those habits that I want to talk about is the fear of money. So what was your first fear of money?
My first fear of money was, literally just having finished school in the middle of one of the worst recessions this country has ever seen, and understanding that, like, thank God for that I have, powerful like family and friend network, but I still probably applied for upwards of 300 jobs over the course of like a year and a half, just, yeah, trying to get anything. I mean, I've never been allergic to work. I mean, I sold, and I've always loved making money. So like, I actually didn't enjoy school really for most of my life. Right. I've always actually I've enjoyed making money. Is like thrilling to me. And I've sold solar panels door to door in college during the recession. And like, I got out, and then the fear of scarcity of money, can be it can toughen you up. Right. So it made me hard. I mean, I basically was like, I'm so tired of getting rejected. I was competing for internships with people with master's degrees, right? That it was just so bad. And, I was like, all right, well, I just need to go wait tables until I find something. I gotta do something. I gotta make some money. And then in real estate, the fear of money, what it became for me was, I want to take care of the money that I make, as aggressively as I possibly can, so that I don't have to go through another 2008 as an independent contractor, as a real estate agent, which I know is going to get, hit very badly, just like it did at that time. So I would say that was that was a very real fear for me, and I took it seriously.
Yeah, it seems like it. You keep running.
Yeah, exactly.
So, because you did mention like trying to take things outside of work, and that is another strategy that I want everybody to kind of take note of. It's like, yeah, you have your 9 to 5, you have your work, but that is one step away from being broke in case something happens. And so you also have here that you are heavily invested or have interest in crypto. And so as a way to kind of balance your, as you could say, your income a little bit, can you talk a little bit more about the crypto space, and what you have used as your habits inside of crypto space?
Absolutely. So just like a little background of how I got there. One thing I would absolutely like is a must do for anybody listening to this channel, crypto or otherwise. Find a wealth advisor, someone whose job it is like every day to help people invest and make money, and a CPA, a tax, an accountant. Those are two of the most important people to have a relationship with in order to start somewhere and retire early. There's way too much for any one person to know on their own. I mean, it's like I said, the priesthood of money, right? It's just the tax code itself is, I think it's dizzying and voluminous for a reason. And so you need these two people to be your experts in both of those fields. And I did start there. And so I wasn't originally invested in crypto. I eventually got there, but the wealth advisor that I had, who I've also recommended to several of my other clients, and he's made them a tremendous amount of money, did a great job investing for me. And then it was just kind of, it's weird how it happened. I mean, it was still this mentality of like, I want to invest aggressively and not be, tied to a job, for the rest of my life. And it was just, someone had suggested another project, and I started investing in that, but like it didn't work out, the first one. But what I learned, through that experience, and what I came to discover about where this particular asset class is headed, was so fascinating to me. I mean, it feels as though this is a new type of internet being born, the internet of things, the internet of value, right? Where anything can be tokenized and fractionalized and converted into a secure method of transfer of anything. It could be property, it could be art, it could be just the tokens themselves. But it's being built underneath our noses, this new financial system and this new kind of network of blockchain and it's essentially cryptography, basically. And what I discovered in researching this space was that this is something to pay attention to, because it's still so early. We obviously have seen this explosion of, you've got YouTubers and Twitter handles, and you have traders who are guruing on, how to pay attention to Fibonacci sequences and where to pick what's going to moon, quote unquote. And, what I discovered was like, yeah, in a bull run, certainly, this makes a lot of sense to me. You get a whole bunch of interest and a ton of speculative trading. But none of that actually fascinated. What fascinated me was like, what is the actual utility of this new technology? Where is this headed? What is going to solve a real world problem? And once you start seeing that, central banks and money transfer organizations like Swift and PayPal, are are getting involved in this space because it's a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful technology that for them, in that specific example, saves them a tremendous amount of money and decreases friction, increases the flow and speed of money. So it's really that's what I'm waiting for, is the utility phase of this. And there's something like 15 to 20,000 cryptos themselves out there, right, in the space. And I happen to think that 95 to 99% of those things are going to go away, and whoever's left standing is going to be left standing because they're regulatory compliant and they solve a problem. And that's, I think, very exciting.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Because it goes back to, ultimately, like you said, solving a problem. Like, what is the point of creating it if you're not solving a problem? And everybody has like that baseline, or whatever the base of that cryptological space of which one are they going to use. So like, yeah, Bitcoin might be the biggest one, but what other coins are being based off of that one? And like Ethereum, there are other cryptos that are being based off that base. So how do we navigate that space and figure things out? And so with that being said, actually, you can go out there and create your own, right?
You can. I mean, that's, definitely not my wheelhouse. I studied sociology and a little bit of environmental science, but definitely not. I think the last like web-based class I took was in high school, like just very simple coding, like, oh, I just turned the background blue, like, I mean, you have to be, there are some really brilliant people behind some of like the most exciting stuff happening in the space. And I guess there's ways to learn how to, create your own chain or coin or ecosystem. And so, I mean, that to me is great advice. Like if you have that proclivity and you enjoy coding, or you have any sort of talent in that field, you should be pouring your attention into this space, because it's going to be huge. It's going to be trillions of dollars worth of change in the system. And the people who can actually do it, and create dApps and side chains and all this exciting stuff. Because again, it's so new, right? It's even after 10, 12 years, it's a very young industry. And if you can do it now, because that job is going to be high in demand, right? Like I'm sure a lot of like what you talk about on this show must be about, what does the economy of the future look like? Mm-hmm. What jobs are going to stay? What are going to go away? Because we see all this AI being developed and mechanization of trying to replace a lot of labor sectors. So you really want to get ahead of things. You want to have a trade that will be practical in tomorrow's economy.
I usually tell people looking at HVAC and plumbing, like, that's not going anywhere. We need to stay warm or cold, and we need to flush the toilet. So, yeah,
couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say about because you were talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum, we were talking about the practicality of some of these projects. Obviously, Bitcoin and Ethereum. What the best metaphor to me of what's going on right now is like it's very much like the .com explosion, mm-hmm. right? Before that sort of bubble burst, it was, you had, the internet was a new thing, right? And so in the beginning it was like AOL, right? So like AOL is Bitcoin, and you get I don't know how many people watching are old enough to remember getting you get 1,000 hours on a CD, and you can't use the phone line because it's dial up, and you're and then you're going on, and there wasn't a ton of sites either. So you're basically just going on and then chatting with your friends. It was like, it just really didn't have the infrastructure anything close to what it has now, right? And then eventually that evolves and it became Yahoo, right? Yahoo was the next big platform and sort of place where everyone was driven, right? And then once all the dust settled and there was the dot-com bust, it's like that's when Google rose, and the technology was like 100 times better than any other algorithm or company that had existed up to that point. And so I liken Bitcoin and Ethereum, that's like sort of the stage we're in, right? Where you still have people who are like, AOL is the best, and that's Bitcoin, and Yahoo is Ethereum. Right. And I have my own theory as to what Google is, but it's just to say that that metaphor is apt because not too many people research what the underlying technology actually is and why it matters, right? Proof of work versus proof of stake, and some of the other protocols that are being used, and why transaction speed, energy use, scalability, these things all matter, especially if you're going to, whatever problem you're trying to solve, they matter even more, right? Because if it winds up being something that everybody wants to now use, you better hope that you've factored in scalability and energy use, because your system will crash. Like I'm sure everybody who's done anything in this space has seen Ethereum's gas fees, how long a Bitcoin transaction can take. Yep. Not too many people know that Bitcoin uses over 1% of the world's energy.
That's crazy.
Just Bitcoin mining. Yeah, it's incredibly energy taxing.
Yeah, because there was I'm trying to find a statistic, but we'll since we're talking about transactions like per day, what does it say per second?
Yeah,
is that like, because I'm looking at PayPal does 193 transactions per second, and I think Bitcoin couldn't match how many transactions, because they're doing it at a global scale. And I believe they were only doing maybe 1 or 2% of the amount that PayPal is doing. Or I think Visa is one of the big ones. Yeah, Visa is the biggest one, but when you break it down to okay, I did find it. Hold on. Just give me one moment here. I'm trying to get the actual stats, but because somebody just threw it up here. So they're doing it currency speed transaction comparison from Visa to PayPal. And they were just showing 1,000. They doing Visa is doing 24,000, and Bitcoin is doing 7. Ethereum is doing 20. So Litecoin is doing 56, and PayPal is at 193. So that's kind of show the comparison right there. So if they trying to work on speed, but if you're using 1% of the world's energy just to do 60, that is the rate of return is not that great. So
yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think I read there's a really great kid out there. I don't want to disrespect him that way, but he literally is a kid. I mean, this guy's super young, but he's a developer with R3, and I believe R3 is a company, and the coin associated with is XDC. Mm-hmm. And I've listened to him being interviewed, and he just has so much in-depth knowledge about blockchain itself and what's going on with these projects. And he's like, it's insane to me that people haven't done the math based on the energy usage. There isn't enough energy on the planet to make Bitcoin a globally scalable payments provider. It can't. You have a lot of people who, and I get where they're coming from, because I'm somewhat of, and I mean, I'm somewhat of a libertarian or independent, whatever, minded person myself. I don't like big central banks. I don't like the Federal Reserve. I don't like tyrannical governments. Who does, right? You got to be a little brainwashed to like those things. But that doesn't mean they don't have a place. And, you have a lot of people who've convinced themselves in what I would say a very naive way that Bitcoin is somehow going to cancel out all the central banks and governments of the world and become, this decentralized system that everybody can use, and the banks will just go away. And that is almost laughably naive because not only does the technology, maybe it could change. I hope it does. I'm not a hater. It's also a very tribal space that way, right? Like you have maxis of every coin imaginable. And it's good to believe in something, but it's also important to be realistic about the expectations associated with some of these projects.
So what do you think about just going on nuclear and just kind of give us nuclear energy just to kind of power it off?
I think that, well, to be honest, what I really think is that there is free energy technology that has been black shelved by the government for a long time now. Assuming they want to continue to keep that a secret from humanity, and we just have to deal with what's out there in the $700 trillion petrodollar paradigm of oil, coal, and it's that fossil fuels and nuclear. I mean, I don't think that any of these options should be taken off the table if we don't want to, put undue duress on the system we currently have. Yes, it's good to try to develop new stuff, but if you just start yanking options away too quickly, right? People suffer big time. The economy suffers big time. So I'm a fan of nuclear, but people should probably be better educated in what are the costs of extracting these types of energies. What is the input? What's the output? How much do they make sense? How much more efficient can some of them become so that they make even more sense? And nuclear is certainly an option that I don't think should be taken off the table or folded anytime soon.
Nice. All right. I know we were talking about the futures for the third segment, as far as the currency and transactions, and as far as like utilizing the next, I guess you could say, type of currency that's going to be utilized across the globe. I guess you could say like what, generation 7, I guess, if you want to look at currency from just bartering system to, the silver coins to the gold coins to animals, and then next thing you know, we got all this. Now we're already doing digital transactions already, because when's the last time you got a paper check and actual paid in cash? So
right.
It's just another branch inside a transaction. So now we want to start talking about you again. What is in the future within the next 2 years? Where do you see yourself?
The next 2 years, I see myself, well, I guess the question is, why do I see myself retired? Doesn't mean done working.
Right.
But I don't feel as though after 2 years that I will be in a position where I have to work for a paycheck anymore. Okay. And, but that took years of patience and research and definitely some risk, right? But I would say that I don't know what I'd be doing with my time, because like all I'm focused on right now is just to get to that point. I would say, going back, because you started mentioning, precious metals and barter system and stuff. I mean, in my personal opinion, we're witnessing the kind of slow demolition of the fiat-based debt system. But I think the powers that be that are kind of demolishing that behind the scenes are creating the new system underneath it. Okay. And when, so this concept of central bank digital currencies and everything going digital is a very real thing. And you have countries and central banks around the world all testing and green lighting their own central bank digital currency.
Yep.
And so it's important to to understand that, like, if you, because I think it's in many ways dystopian. I think the whole purpose of it is to be able to track and trace every transaction around the planet. And I think it's for people to be aware that, like, because they're telegraphing that this is happening and very openly. I mean, you look at the white papers that are the sort of framework that the World Economic Forum and the IMF and all of these NGOs are all basically stating in no uncertain terms, is that this is the direction we're taking everything. And, this kind of you'll own nothing and be happy, great reset that they keep advertising to us. And I think that you should pay attention to it, because you could either profit tremendously from positioning yourself in anticipation of it, but also prevent yourself from becoming a victim of it that way. Right. And just another cog in this giant machine that they're creating for us. And if you're able to profit from it, I mean, I've always, part of why I was an environmental systems and society minor at UCLA is because I've always been about sustainability. I mean, if we don't course correct, on, and this is related to everything with like housing and everything really, if we don't get to a place, whether it's energy, housing, food production, goods and services, that we move into a circular pattern, a closed loop where things can be, recycled and continuous, as is, I think, what is intended in nature, right? And off of this line of just produce, consume, and destroy, we're going to be in for a rough ride. And so I think that part of my plan would be, just get back to the answer to your question, in 2 years, if I did calculate things right and I had the capacity to do so, I would be buying at least enough land that I could grow my own food, have solar panels, so I'm not necessarily dependent on the grid, right, stocking provisions, of like real things that you're going to need, and kind of trying to disconnect from what I think is becoming this matrix-like metaverse digital, disconnect, from nature. And so that would probably be the next 20, 30 years of my life, is moving away from that matrix-like future with whatever, in whatever capacity I could, and forward that on to the next generation. I mean, having been put through the DC public school system and seeing like what we're up against in the city in terms of, I see so many kids still on that, go to get your undergrad train, and now you've got all this student loan debt and to do, not understanding the ROI of that path. You talked about HVAC and plumbing and stuff, and it's like, these guys are raking it in because they can charge whatever they want
at this point.
Because nobody really knows how to do that stuff anymore. No, you don't know how to fix your car. You don't know how to fix, your clogged drain. You don't know how to get your hands on some Freon to pour into your HVAC system on a 114-degree day in Texas.
It's like,
so I think
Freon is expensive. It's like $50 a pound or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we even talked about that. Which companies own Freon? Because it's like, once you start to see where the world is headed, you can kind of make some pretty logical bets on, where to place your money or what to do, right? Like what to pursue, so that, you'll always be in demand in the future economy.
Yeah. We talk a lot on the futures. I actually, just listening to you, I could actually see you in 2 years up and down on YouTube, just doing daily videos. Like, did you see this? Like,
Yeah, certainly got a lot to say. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that's probably not appropriate for this podcast, but um, I've experienced a lot in life. I've seen a lot, and I think like a lot of some of the maybe more extreme takes on what I think are happening are slowly coming true, and it's giving me more and more confidence to tell people, hey, I think you should really pay attention to what's going on here, and really, I mean, I think the smartest people when it comes to investing or becoming someone who people pay attention to or influential, right, is there's something that every single person knows, right? Like they either have intuition or knowledge towards, and they know it better than 99% of other people. It could be something very specific, but that is what you should focus on and become even more of an expert on, because that's how our economy is. We're all hyper specialists, and it's the same in investing. And that's what good investors say. It's like most of what's out there is noise. Like don't copy Warren Buffett's portfolio. That's not meant for you. Don't copy this person, what they do. They know that's their lane. Like what is it that most other people don't have a lot of insight into? And trust your instincts on that and go with it. Go with your gut. It's your intuition often doesn't lie. And if it's screaming stuff at you, pay attention to it, leverage it, and people will be coming to you for advice in not too long.
Nice. Awesome. So you ready for the final four question?
Oh yeah. Hit me.
Right. So what does wealth mean to you?
Wealth to me means abundance, not just for you, but for every generation subsequent to you. And wealth really means to me freedom. To me, it's not about, I don't want an $80 million yacht. I don't need so much of what so many people say over through time immemorial about wealth is that after a certain point, that just becomes stuff. It just becomes stuff that you just get attached to. But the true impact of wealth to me is freedom. It's the freedom to be able to make your own choices and to go places you want to go without asking permission or needing to stay behind because somebody else cuts your checks. And it's the freedom to be able to offer that as a gift to your kids, your friends, your family, whoever. You don't have to have kids, but if that is something that you can pass along to another person, that is an even greater blessing. So that's what wealth means to me: freedom for yourself and for the people that you care about.
All right. Number 2, what was your worst money mistake?
Specifically, or more like just in terms of like what mistake did I have as an approach towards investing?
Specific. I mean, it's up to you. What you consider is your worst money mistake? Because some people say like, oh, buying that car or, going out buying drinks. Like, it depends on you.
I would say, okay, so for me, and this is actually really important. If you are trying to become a real estate agent or an entrepreneur, the biggest mistake I think that I see made all the time, and I think all of us are guilty of it to a degree, real estate agents especially, is you get that check at the settlement table for, let's say, 20 grand. If it's like $1 million property, right? Mm-hmm. And you're looking at $20,000. You're not looking at $20,000 you're looking at 60% of $20,000 because you're going to have to pay close to half of that bad boy to the old GOV and the IRS, right?
Mhm.
And so you cannot take that check and immediately start spending it as though you have $20,000. You need to be really, really disciplined about making sure that if you can't deduct anything, that all that money for the IRS is going to be sacked away. And I'll tell you a story. My in-laws bought a property in St. Michael's, and it turned out that the person they were buying this house from, pretty historic house, and it was an expensive purchase. But the person they were buying it from, without naming names, was another well-known real estate agent in my area who I was familiar with. And when they saw the settlement statement, this was basically like $1 million sale, and this particular agent barely covered the tax lien with that sale. In other words, he had like over $700,000 of tax debt that he had to cover. And there's many more stories like that. And so, like, I would say for your 1099 folks, for sure, the biggest mistake that you can make is not being conscious of your tax obligations.
Cool. I know you said for others, but what was yours? So what was your mistake?
Oh, I mean, I say that because, like, in the past, I've gotten behind. Yeah, where I've gotten excited about this investment or that investment, and then next thing you know, like, I get the bill from my CPA of what I'm going to owe, and I'm like, I had to pull some money out of my SEP RI, what is it? Yeah. And which is a penalty. You get penalized for that, so I've made that mistake, not on the level of the agent I told you about, but I've made those mistakes in the past for sure. And they are a true punch in the gut when they happen.
Nice. And for those of you who are wondering what SEP is, it's a simplified employee pension plan. It's just, so for those of you who are self-employed, you can get one of those.
It's good. It allows you to tax-free. My wealth advisor can make trades inside of it, invest inside of it, and make trades without being hit for capital gains.
Yep. Third question is, what is your favorite financial or non-financial book?
The Four Agreements.
Okay, I haven't heard of that one.
It's more philosophical, but it's really important. It applies to everything. Let me see if I can pull up the author for you real quick.
I found it. Don Miguel.
Yep.
Ruiz.
Mm-hmm. It's an easy read too. It's simple, but it's very profound. Yeah, this is not a war and peace. You should be able to pick this up and be through it in a day or two, and it'll change you, because it's very simple but profound truth, and I think it's one that a lot of people, especially in today's society, need to hear.
Alrighty, well, I'll make sure to definitely put a link to that book. I actually might add that to my Christmas list.
It makes it, I mean, obviously, unless you're an avid reader, getting a big, thick book for Christmas can be a bummer. This is one of those books that you get and you're like, all right, this I can get through this pretty quickly. This isn't a burden. It isn't like homework, and I guarantee you, after the first 10 pages, you won't be able to put it down.
Nice. All right. Well, I'll keep you posted and let you know how that goes once I get the book.
Okay.
So this is a fun question that I always like to throw in here is, what is your favorite dish to make?
Chicken a la tom. It's a dish I made up. My wife is a chef.
Okay.
And so she typically does the cooking in our household, but she gets excited when I make this. So it's chef approved. You just take one of those glass It's like glass, the baking pans.
Mm-hmm.
Get some chicken breasts. You're going to need variety of tomatoes, not like giant red, but you know what I mean? Some of the yellows and oranges, the smaller tomatoes, artichokes, capers, onions, lemon, and your you can do rice. It doesn't have to be rice, but you just season the chicken with like lemon pepper seasoning, and like salt and pepper, just kind of a normal. And then you throw all of that stuff, the tomatoes, also spinach. So tomatoes, artichokes, spinach, capers, onions, all of that in around the chicken.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just bake it. You bake it like you're baking the chicken.
Nice. At like
So
50 or 400?
Yeah, like 375 for like 35 minutes.
Okay.
400 for around there. However long it takes to bake chicken, in your oven, basically. And don't worry about what the vegetables do. They basically just create a lot of juice that marinates the chicken, and then you eat the vegetables and make it with some rice or whatever your favorite starch is.
That is awesome. I actually might have to try that.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good, especially in the spring, but fall too.
Okay. Yeah, because it's not tomato season in fall.
Yeah.
Well, all right, we'll figure it out.
But yeah, if you want to link to my wife's Twitter when we hop off, I'll send that to you. She's a food writer for the Washingtonian and can definitely give your listeners better advice than I can in the food department.
Nice. Well, maybe we might be able to have her on. Who knows? Be fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the very last question is where can people find out more about you?
Again, my online presence isn't huge. I'm more of a pick up the phone and call me type of guy, but my business partner, I have a humble little website, metrodwellings.net. And so all my contact info is there. You can see a lot of past listings we've sold and read some more in my bio. But I would say the best way to get in touch with me is call. I'm old school, and I'm happy to talk about anything, really. Like if you need a wealth advisor, a CPA, you want advice about buying property, you want any sort of connections that I've built for myself or knowledge that I've gained for myself over the last 10, 12 years or 37, to be totally honest, then call me, text me, email me. Let's have a conversation.
All righty. I'll make sure to put that information in the show notes so they can go down and I'll reach out to you. Well, I don't have anything extra at this point because I think we're coming up to the end of the show. But I want to thank you so much, Thomas, for coming on to the show to share your knowledge about real estate, how somebody can actually get started, and actually how to maintain themselves and their composure to understand, like, hey, this is not something that you can just get in within like 5 minutes and you think you're golden. It takes time, 5+ years, he said. So once you sell them to buying their house back or helping them sell again, from buyers to sellers, that's what you want to make sure you get down to. Actually, I might make that the title of the show. From buyers to sellers.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty cool. But I want you all to make sure you link up with Thomas and his team to make sure you guys are looking into the DC area. If you have any interest to purchase, even long distance, he can help you out. So remember, if you got any value out of this episode, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share. It provides a lot of value to yourself and also to others, and actually to me as well, so we can start getting more people like Thomas onto the show to help grow our community and our finances so we can build strong financial habits. All right, everybody, y'all be safe. I'm out. Peace.